Now, let's turn our attention to medical and scientific breakthroughs, because I think it's safe enough to say that two diseases that are unfortunately all too common as we age, and we do know that we have an ageing population here in Ireland, are macular degeneration disease, which affects the eye, and of course, all too common now in our ageing population is Alzheimer's and dementia. And the good news, however, is that a lot of breakthroughs have been made with all of these conditions. And some research has found that there's what's called carotenoids, and these are plant-based pigments that can actually contain antioxidant properties that can help to combat the ageing process and to help fight some of these conditions. But a lot of us don't eat enough of the foods that contain these carotenoids. But incredible research is being done up the country in Waterford and by one of my next guests for the last 2 decades or so into the power of these plant-based pigments and what they can do. And by a simple test, you can find out if you are low in these particular carotenoids. And if you are, you could be somebody who could benefit from taking a supplement that will help increase the levels of your carotenoids in your system and thereby possibly combating some of the worst effects of these illnesses. Well, I spoke earlier to find out more about this exciting research to Professor John Nolan, who's been involved in the research for over 20 years along with a team of other scientists, and also to Eugene Matthews from the company WMO Healthcare Ltd, which has formulated a test for seeing whether or not people are low in carotenoids. And at the outset, not getting too technical, but I asked Professor Nolan to explain to us in layperson's terms what exactly are these all-important carotenoids.
They're plant-based pigments, and in life we talk about eating well and good nutrition, and we hear expressions like vitamins and minerals. But ultimately, we have 2 types of micronutrients within our system that are beneficial. You have those that are kind of essential, that, in other words, if you don't have them, you will develop a disease. And we have examples of this throughout the body. And so we know that there are essential micronutrients that we need to take. The nutrients we're speaking about are not vitamins, they're not minerals, they're plant-based pigments. But what they have is very strong antioxidant properties. So your listeners will be comfortable and familiar with what sunscreen does. It's an antioxidant that we put on our skin to stop us getting damage from sun, which is basically energy that can kind of destroy the cells. And the same thing happens inside our body. And the science of over 2 decades of research has demonstrated that these plant-based pigments, which means that we have to consume them from diet because they're plant-based, we don't make them inside our body, have very powerful antioxidant properties. And they are located throughout our body, in our skin, in fatty tissues, in our eye, in our brain. And what we have identified is the exact carotenoids that are located and concentrated in the back of the eye, a part of the eye called the retina. And if you think of it like the film of the camera.
Yeah.
And also in the brain. So these are the tissues that we need these tissues to be healthy throughout our life and into our later years. And what can happen with our tissues, just like our skin or our hair, with time and with age and with lifestyle stresses and this thing called oxidative stress, what happens is these tissues can get old and get sick and get damaged. And if that happens, they'll stop working. And if you think of the film of the camera not working, that's a big problem. You can't take a photo. It's the same in the human body. If the back of the eye, the retina, stops working, we lose our vision. And remarkably, we've identified the carotenoid, the plant-based pigments, that we can concentrate now with supplementation to give that extra protection throughout our life. It's important for everyone, not just the elderly population, and into our later years. And what's important about all of this is that the foods that we see in supermarkets, for example, foods that have plant-based foods that have colours like your carrots, your peppers, your egg yolk is another example, so the colour of the egg. These are colourful because of these carotenoids. But we just don't have enough from normal diet. So, of course, the first thing we should say here is being well, being healthy, eating well is essential for good life. But even when we do that, because of how long we're living and because of the new environmental and lifestyle stresses that we're exposed to, and because of the fact that the nutrients, the foods that we're eating continue, unfortunately, to devolve in the amount of good micronutrients that are present, we have this massive deficiency. So the science of our time, and it's over 2 decades of research from previously Waterford Institute of Technology, now the South East Technological University and the Nutrition Research Centre Ireland, and from many laboratories across the world, we've been able to identify the exact carotenoids. And we've been able to source them from plants. So from when we do our research in Waterford, the formulations are developed from these beautiful flowers called marigold flowers. So they come from Mexico. And the science of what we've been able to achieve starts there in terms of how we can formulate carefully and correctly, and how we are able to, in a very purified way and a very concentrated way, deliver to the human being 20 times more carotenoids per day than what they can get from a typical diet. And the science is very, very clear that when we do this, we can enrich these carotenoid pigments in our entire body, in our skin, in our eye, in our brain. And this is really important for a disease called macular degeneration. This is the world's leading cause of age-related blindness. And in our clinical trials, we tested a formulation that had 3 carotenoids: lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin. And I don't expect your listeners to remember that, but they should remember that there's 3 parts to this very important nutritional jigsaw, and that we were able to test that in this unique formula, and then that was developed as a supplement called MacuPrime, which is over 20 years research from our university and other centres across the world. And we developed in our first studies that when we do this for patients with this condition called macular degeneration, we can greatly enhance their vision. So in a disease where people lose their central vision and essentially go blind centrally, and in a disease that current standard of healthcare really unfortunately waits for everyone to have a very advanced form of the disease before they'll even try to attempt to manage it. That's what current medicine really does if we look at it. We've been able to show that getting in front of this with targeted supplement intervention enriches these protective pigments in the film of the camera, the retina, and the most recent work then of course extended those discoveries into brain health. In other words, that the eye is the window to the brain. It's the seeing part of the brain. So everything we were able to achieve in the eye, we've been able to demonstrate of importance for brain health. And remarkably, not only can we enhance visual function, we can enhance cognitive function, so brain function. So all your listeners will be familiar with situations where maybe their attention or their mood or their memory is greatly affected. And that's because the brain is a tissue that needs to work, and the brain is under this constant attack as well. So can we do something with nutrition that's targeted with these same supplements to help in that? And the answer was very clear. And all of this, what I've summarised in the introduction, is the result of, as I said, over 2 decades of research and what we call peer-reviewed scientific publication. And in life and in health and in medicine, I think we all make our decisions based on valid information. And that's what peer-reviewed science allows doctors and patients alike to benefit from.
Okay.
So we're very pleased. Yeah, so that's the summary, essentially.
That's the summary of it. And Eugene, may I bring you in at this point? And where does WMO Healthcare Ltd come into the picture here? It's in terms of a test that's been devised to see if people are low in these carotenoids. Is that right?
That's correct. Well, the device that's used is called a LifeMeter, and it was actually Professor Nolan there helped to develop this device. There's currently only 3 of them in Ireland, and there's very few of them in the world. They were initially developed for research purposes. And what this device can do is it can measure your carotenoid levels by screening your skin. It's a skin scanner, and we can measure the level of carotenoids that people have in their system. And with that information, we can make recommendations to the patients based on their score. And what we now know is people who live in Mediterranean countries score very high in this device because they eat what's known as the Mediterranean diet. We've heard about it for years. And what the scientists have been able to do, as Professor Nolan has just indicated, is they've been able to identify the key nutrients that's in the Mediterranean diet that people are getting down in Mediterranean countries that we're not getting enough of here, and it's these carotenoids. So by screening people, we can give them a score, and we can say, look, the recommendation is that you go on a supplement, or recommendation initially is obviously a healthier diet. But, people don't adhere to that. They've been told to eat a healthy diet for years and years and years, and that advice is clearly not working with the levels of Alzheimer's disease that's now developing in Ireland, and also age-related macular degeneration.
So if I could just come in there, Eugene, the nice thing about the skin scanner is it's a very non-invasive, so it's not difficult to do, and it's not dangerous or in any way to the patient or to the interested participant. And what it does is it essentially measures the carotenoids in the skin, which is a very good screening and indicator of the concentration of the carotenoids in the target tissue, which is the eye and the brain. And this is only available now. That's what's exciting about this, because we've been doing research for over 20 years, and to measure carotenoids at the retina is a very difficult thing to do. It's kind of refined to the lab, so we can only do it in our clinical studies. But now, we're able to take this out to people who may be well worried, who may have a family history of macular degeneration or even Alzheimer's disease, that want to know if there's something that they can modify that can contribute in some way to the preventative piece in this. It's not, so we're not saying this is like a silver bullet or anything. We're not talking about cures. We're talking about modifying something that's highly impactful in real time, and then in a preventative way for these conditions. And that's explicitly clear. That's not a hypothesis anymore, and it's now the duty of care of science to communicate that to eye care professionals and healthcare professionals, and we can't keep doing the same thing we've been doing for 20 or 30 years, which is waiting until people are so sick that we're going to treat them with these drugs, pharmaceutical drugs that are highly expensive and highly invasive and not that effective, to be very honest, particularly for Alzheimer's disease. The treatments, as we know, with the 500 billion that's been spent on pharmaceutical hasn't worked.
Okay. Eugene, can I just come back to you? Have many people here in Ireland been tested using this skin scanner?
Currently, yes. We're up over 5,000 people now this year. We've screened in pharmacies all over the country. And once we screen them, we can give them a recommendation. And just something I'd like to bring in here at this point. Professor Nolan and his team of scientists in Waterford, who've dedicated their lives to this research, have started an amazing new initiative, and it's called Supplement Certified, where companies who sell supplements can actually send their products to them and have them verified and certified on a 3-monthly basis to make sure that their supplements contain the correct ingredients. And this is part of the problem we're trying to change, because Macuprine, for example, and Remind, the two supplements that we do the distribution for here in Ireland and the UK, they're the only supplements that have been clearly proven by Waterford in the research to be accurate and to be effective. So the 30 peer-reviewed clinical trials behind Macuprine. So there's people out there taking product at the moment, and we now know that they're taking the wrong product. So they need to look and see what they're taking for age-related macular degeneration. If they're not taking Macuprine, we believe that they're not taking the correct product. And by screening people, we're finding this evidence is clear that people are deficient, even though they're taking certain supplements, and it's not working. So that's our message that we're trying to get all around the country,
And just coming back to the skin scanner, what kind of results were you getting in terms of the percentage of people scanned who showed up to be deficient in the carotenoids?
In around 70% nationwide currently are deficient.
Okay, and as Professor Nolan said, that can't be rectified by diet alone.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and what we've seen clinically kind of verifies what we've seen in our research studies as well. No, it can't. I mean, so the healthiest person listening to this radio interview today is probably consuming about 2 milligrams of 2 of the 3 carotenoids, lutein and zeaxanthin. Our studies show that you need to be upwards of 20 milligrams if we're to optimize our delivery systems, that's the blood system. And thereafter, the tissues that need these nutrients can absorb them like a reservoir, if you like. But just, and so they're being used the whole time as well. They're antioxidants, so antioxidants are used, so they need to be replaced. So there needs to be this balance within our system. And it's something that you must comply to. It's something that you must do over time. It's not like taking a painkiller that's going to have an effect instantly, a systemic effect. This is something that is kind of a lifestyle change to give those tissues. And to your question, current food is not delivering enough of these, even so people shouldn't think that they're doing anything wrong. I have a young family myself, and sometimes I look at, the place and guess what they're probably consuming. I have a little girl called Penny and another girl called Bee, and with their best efforts with the broccoli and the peas and everything, they're just miles away from having enough of these nutrients that we need to give us the protection we need throughout our life. So, there is a absolute, supplements sometimes have this kind of bad rep, if you like, in terms of, do they work and so on? And I asked that question myself, and that's why we have to look at the specific micronutrients that have a scientific evidence base, that have been tested in the various populations and for the various conditions that can deliver that effect. So we must implement that if we're to change what's currently happening in society. Okay,
very good. Just finally, Eugene, I believe you're off to America shortly to hear about the latest developments in the use of carotenoids.
Yeah, I'm actually travelling on Monday. But saying that, Professor Nolan there has travelled throughout the whole world. This year he's been in Japan, Korea.
Yeah, we've been all over Asia. We've been all over Mexico, all over the United States, all over Europe as well. So it's been a very busy year of communication. And the success we've seen, I think it's a good point, because what I learned now is that the doctors that have been doing this successfully, the results only last week I was in Orlando at a conference, and the line of people waiting to discuss their own experience with me in terms of using the supplement for their patients, in terms of how it's helped their patients and their practice. And that's the most rewarding thing as a scientist. It's not getting a scientific publication, it's that our science has impacted people's health and quality of life in real time. So we're all very proud of that.
I presume there are places all over the country, Eugene, where people can get tested for the carotenoids, are there?
Yeah, we only have one device currently, so we're doing a road trip. We're going to be doing it for about 3 years. But what we do is we go into a pharmacy for a day, and people can get in touch with their local pharmacy. And the pharmacy then can get in touch with WMO Healthcare to set up their screening days. But one of the confidence we have in this whole process, which is really important, is that when we go in and screen somebody, and if we find they have a low score and we recommend a supplement, we come back in 6 months again and rescreen them. Now, we wouldn't be doing that if we weren't confident that they were going to have increased carotenoid levels in their system. So MacuPrime and Remind, regardless of which supplement we put people on, depending on their age and their scoring, etc., but we'll come back in 6 months and retest them.
And that was Eugene Matthews there from WMO Healthcare Ltd that has come up with this skin scanner that can tell you if you are low in these carotenoids. And of course, the carotenoids, as we explained already, can predict the likelihood of someone getting Alzheimer's if you're low in them.